Three Green Bay Packers made the Locked On Top 100. All of them came in behind a player who has yet to play a snap in the NFL.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Three Green Bay Packers made the Locked On Top 100. None of them in the top 50. And all of them after, and this is crazy and it is true, all of the Green Bay Packers came in after Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, in case you are unaware, and all the more reason, has yet to play an NFL snap. He's a rookie. What are we doing here? I'm excited to see him play football too. Come on. Come on. Now, let's set that to the side because I'm willing to forgive. And this every year happens. We get a little too excited about rookies. Fantasy football plays a role. I think people are very excited about what Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. can be. My guy, Tony Wiggins, who covers the Jaguars, Locked On Jags, is going to have a blast watching that team and covering that team. Let's put that to the side. Trey McBride is ahead of Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney was an all-pro last year. Christian Gonzalez was ahead. Christian Gonzalez has been a nice player for the New England Patriots. I get it. Xavier McKinney was an all-pro last season. And here's the thing. Kirby Joseph hit this list at 45. So you can't tell me that the gap between Kirby Joseph and Xavier McKinney is Kirby Joseph at 45 and Xavier McKinney all the way down at 74. I call shenanigans on that. That's nonsense. And look, all of these players are good, but like Calais Campbell is ahead of Xavier McKinney. Alvin Kamara, Charvarius Ward, they're ahead of Xavier McKinney. Like it's just not it. And I don't quite understand exactly what happened. People just, and I think this is the grand unifying theory here. I think two things are true about the Green Bay Packers over the last two seasons. Or at least one of two things is true, depending on the person. Either you don't believe, or they don't believe, the Packers were as good as they were, certainly as good as the numbers said they were over the last two seasons. Or you understand what the metrics say, but because the names are not as familiar to us, they're not as sexy maybe, you don't quite understand how it's possible. And this is a conversation, it is right in line with something we've been talking about all offseason. Cornerbacks. Well, people don't get how the Packers had a top 10 offense, despite having this cornerback room, but it happened. And people don't quite understand how the Packers had a top 5 offense last year with no stud number one receiver. But it happened. But here's where that loses me a little bit, because we talked about the fantasy football brain of it all. Well, the one player you would absolutely want to have in fantasy football from the Green Bay Packers last year or this year is Josh Jacobs, and he didn't even make this list. He didn't even make this list. Alvin Kamara, who I believe has still never had a 1,000-yard season, made this list. Chris Olave, who cannot stay on the football field but is a good player when he is, made this list. Bradley Chubb, who has had multiple season-ending injuries, does not play football, much the same way that Jair Alexander does not play football. In fact, really even worse, lost a whole year. Made this list. Now, if it makes you feel any better, Zach Tom and Josh Jacobs are just off this list. So among the players who just missed, the order was Vita Vea, Zach Tom, Josh Jacobs. Now also, Jalen Johnson just missed. Minka Fitzpatrick just missed. Marlon Humphrey just missed. Brian Thomas Jr. just missed. Ashton Genty was on the just missed list. Those are really good football players. So there are players on this list that I just don't believe belonged, clearly, or I would have voted for them. I didn't vote for J.C. Horn. But I think the lack of Packers comes from a misunderstanding, or at least a lack of understanding, an incredulity at the team's success over the last few years. And I do think, I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, and this is not my excuse to compare my football playing to NFL players. That's not what this is. But in terms of voting, in terms of mentality, I went to a school, played football at a school that was a traditional powerhouse program. We did not have a powerhouse season my senior year. We lost 2 out of conference games, which never happens. Now we lost to the D1 state champ and the D3 state champ. And we lost a game in our conference. And I always believed, and I know our coaches believe this because they told us this, that the voters on the all-conference teams took an opportunity to punish, not really punish, but to say, hey, look, on a down year for Marquette High, which is where I went, let's not reward them. Let's give the opportunity to these other, Menominee Falls and Brookfield Central and Brookfield East. Congratulations to all those people. It feels a little bit like that. After years and years of the Green Bay Packers running the NFC North, they haven't the last 2 years. These other teams have. And after years and years and years of Aaron Rodgers being one of the 5 best players in the NFL every year, he's not there. And David Bakhtiari is not on the top of this list anymore. And Devontae Adams is not on the top of this list anymore. And Jair Alexander is not near the top of this list anymore. And so let's give everyone else a chance. Let's have the participation trophy generation come in and save the day. Because you need to make sure that Baker Mayfield is ahead of Jordan Love on this list, which is, preposterous. It's preposterous. And it's not just Packers, like Mike Evans at 69, right after Jordan Love. Mike Evans should be 20 spots higher. Jordan Love should be 40 spots higher. You heard me yesterday talk about where I put him in the 20s. Xavier McKinney should be 30, 40 spots higher than he is. Not just Packer bias, I'm just looking at the list. He's better than these players. But there is also this part where we talk about Pro Bowls and the idea that you get in a year after you deserve to, and you get in at least a year after you stop deserving it. There are some players on this list who don't deserve to be where they are because of their play on the field. Some guys that are getting a little bit older who are, I don't want to say skating on reputation, but are certainly pushed up by their reputation. Laramie Tunsil, one of those players, by the way, top 40. Swap Laramie Tunsil and Xavier McKinney, and I would feel much better about this list. Swap Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Love. I would feel much better about this list. It does seem that there is not a clear understanding of how exactly the Packers have been a playoff team each of the last 2 years. How, like, they do have good players. And in some ways it frames the lack of understanding around this team. We could think of this as the relationship going the other way, where you don't think the players are that good, which leads you to believe the Packers are not that good. So I said one of two things is true. Well, maybe it's the case that you don't think these players are already good or are that good, which must mean the Packers aren't that good. Except that they are. And it started with a fundamental lack of understanding. And I understand how that'll come off, especially coming from me, the host of Locked On Packers. It's going to come off like someone saying you just don't get the art, or you don't understand cinema. You don't understand this filmmaker. It does come off a little bit like that. I get it. I'm also right. I want to talk about some of the players I voted for who didn't make the list, and one player in particular who I did not vote for who did make the list. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to get in a lot of Open Championship bets. As you're listening to this, that has already gotten underway, no doubt. I'm excited about this one. The success I had at Wimbledon has really buoyed my spirits here as we head into the Open Championship. And look at, like, tennis, golf, I understand if those are not your favorite sports, but guess what? FanDuel makes it fun because same game parlays, all sorts of, like, betting golf. There's so many ways to bet golf. Go try it. Go try it. You're going to have fun. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. I told you who I voted for yesterday, which means if you were paying close attention, if you were taking copious notes, you know that there were some players I voted for who did not make the list. I put this out on social media. Last time I checked, no one had guessed correctly what had happened here. So I voted for Xavier McKinney. I voted for Jordan Love. I did not vote for Elgton Jenkins. Now, that's not because I don't think Elgton Jenkins is a really good player. It's hard to make the top 100. So that I'm like, it's not that I think, it's an abomination that some of these players didn't make it. You go down and you read the names on the lists. It is, by and large, all really good players. Like 100 players, there's 32 teams. That's 3 per team. There are more than 3 good players per team in the NFL. Even the bad teams have 3 good players. Maybe the Panthers don't. But most teams have 3, and a lot of teams, again, even some mid teams, have like 5 or 6. The problem for those teams is you need 22. At least you need 25, 28, because injuries are part of the deal. I just didn't feel like Elgton Jenkins played to his standard last year. And then there are the injuries, the injuries part of it. And I do think it probably factored into my thought process that the Packers are changing his position and maybe moving on from him in a year. And that, I think that colored my decision here too. But you go back and you look at like my list, I feel like it's hard to argue with the players that I put on it. I don't have a problem with him being on it, given some of the other players that are on there. It's sort of like when I get engaged in some of these Hall of Fame discussions, Like, I don't think Jerome Bettis is a Hall of Famer. All due respect to him for a great career and a great media personality. He is apparently just the nicest guy. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But if he's in, then like I have to engage with a dozen other running backs and go, well, if Jerome Bettis is in, then that guy belongs in. So even though I don't think that guy is a Hall of Famer, if Jerome Bettis is in, that guy's got to be in. Like if Jerome Bettis is in, Fred Taylor has got to be in. Even if I'm not sure Fred Taylor belongs in. So it's like, okay, if some of these players that are on the list are going to be on the list, well, then I have to believe like, okay, Elgton Jenkins deserves to be on the list. So I can't get, too worked up about that. I do not know. I do not know how you leave Josh Jacobs off this list. I just don't. He was the third or fourth best running back in the league last year. We're talking about a guy who just 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was, calendar years, led the league in rushing. This has been a workhorse back his entire career. Was awesome. Was the reason, along with Malik Willis and Matt LaFleur, that this team was able to stabilize with Jordan Love's injury. I just don't know how he could be kept off your top 100. And I voted for Rashawn Gary. And I understand, now in the 90s, I believe, or 87, something like that, I understand people would like to see more sack production from Rashawn Gary. I understand it. But the 33rd team had this stat, okay? Since Rashawn Gary entered the league, 2019, the players with a higher pressure rate than Rashawn Gary, okay? Micah Parsons, pretty good player. Nick Bosa, pretty good player. Trey Hendrickson, pretty good player. Myles Garrett, pretty good player. That means since Rashawn Gary came into the league, by the way, he was the 80th player on the top 100 players list according to the players. It means Rashawn Gary has a higher pressure rate. Now, I don't know who's charting this, but according to the 33rd team, probably True Media, a higher pressure rate than TJ Watt, a higher pressure rate than Danielle Hunter, a higher pressure rate than Jonathan Grenard, than Aiden Hutchinson, than guys we think of as better than Rashawn Gary because of what happened last year. And I'll go back to the stat I gave you the other day, where on third down last year, Rashawn Gary was a top 6 pass rusher in terms of pressure rate. On early downs, he was a run defender. And by the way, he was the best run defender in the NFL by run stop win rate. He does not have the gaudy sack totals that other players do. And I understand that. It would be nice for him to have that closing burst and speed to finish those plays, or to win a little quicker at times. He is a power rusher, so this is always going to be a little bit of the problem that he has. Now, he also has not been on the field as much as some of these other guys. That's why pressure rate, by the way, is a good stat. Pure pressure numbers, like the Max Crosby, who was tied with him for pressure rate, run stop win rate, plays like 85% of snaps. Rashawn Gary, is lucky if he's 65%. He needs to play more. And I don't know if that's a matter of him getting in better shape just from a cardio standpoint, if it's the fact that he is this like pure power rusher, if because he's asked to shoulder so much of this burden. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But like I do think that if he played 80% of snaps, you go back and you look at Mike Pettin that first year in 2019, coincidentally, Rashawn Gary's first year, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith are playing 75-80% of snaps in these games. I don't know why Rashawn Gary doesn't. And I was told last year before the season that was going to be a point of emphasis, that Jeff Hafley was going to do that. was going to play his best players more often. It just doesn't seem like that's been the case. Now, maybe he's, still working back from the ACL or adjusting to, being a run first player on early downs, and that's tiring him out. You need him out there for third downs. So if you need to get Lucas Van Ness on the field a little bit more on early downs, you got to do that so that on third down, it's not just a pressure, it's a sack. So I think Rashawn Gary deserves to be on this list. Again, I think in a vacuum, he deserves to be on the list, but following the Elgton Jenkins corollary of if some of these other guys are going to be on the list, Rashawn Gary's got to be on the list. I know that there are still some Packer fans who are like, he's not that good. He is. He is really good. I know the contract, I know the first round pick stuff makes you upset. He has outperformed his draft slot. The 50 percentile outcome of the 12th overall pick, Rashawn Gary has surpassed it. And in terms of money, like the contract is only going to get better. Andrew Van Ginkel, I mentioned this yesterday, is 2 years older than Rashawn Gary. He just got his first real contract, had his first real season last year. He's not a better football player than Rashawn Gary. He's just not. He had a better season last year than Rashawn Gary, but he's not a better football player. And that distinction is important. Now, there are some players in Green Bay who I think will be on this list next year. I don't mean in the future, like at some point. I mean next year. I want to talk about them next on Locked On Packers. You guys know the Locked On NFL Top 100 is here. So if you want more information, if you want to watch the show we did that I hosted, find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't miss my reaction to where the Packers landed. I did that on that show. I didn't get a ton of time to react to where they didn't land, but that's what this show is for. Okay, there are a couple obvious names at the top of players that I think will be top 100 guys a year from now. Zach Tom just missed. I think likely that happens next year. And Josh Jacobs just missed. If he has another 1,000-yard year and the Packers win 12 games and he takes over, a playoff game the way that he almost single-handedly brought the Packers back against the Eagles last year, I don't see how you keep him off the list. I think people wanted to see it a little bit with him. I'm not sure exactly. I think part of the problem, going back to the conversation we had at the top, Xavier McKinney, yes, was an all-pro, but it was a one-year wonder thing. He was very good in 2023 and then was an all-pro last year. And I think some people probably, rightly or wrongly, said, you got to prove it. That's not the case with Josh Jacobs. We've seen Josh Jacobs be awesome. So I'm not really sure what the holdup is there. And I know Jordan Love, some people are still iffy on him. I think that's foolish, but I do understand that perception is out there. So I think Zach Tom and Josh Jacobs are the most likely guys to jump on the list because they almost made the list last year, which is now. But we're talking about next year, right? You know probably the two next names I'm going to give you. Tucker Kraft, Edgerrin Cooper. I didn't really have a problem with Tucker Kraft not being on the top 10 tight ends list last year, or this the ESPN list. And as I looked at this list, it was hard to argue. It wasn't like there were some trash players on this list. It wasn't like, okay, like Zach Ertz got on and Tucker Kraft didn't. And I don't think he's a trash player. He's just like Tucker Kraft was better last year than him and will continue to be better than him. So it's hard for me to get too up in arms about that one. But Tucker Kraft this year is going to be, I predicted on the radio the other day in Salt Lake City, I believe, that Tucker Kraft was going to have a sort of like 70 catch, 850 yard, 10 touchdown type season this year. I think that's coming. And I think if that happens, he will have to be on this list next year because I think that will mean this Packers offense is like top 3. They won a bunch of games. And it will be generally accepted he is one of the best 5 or 8 tight ends in the NFL. And in that case, he has to be on this list. I also understand. I did not vote for Tucker Kraft, by the way. And I did not vote for Edgerrin Cooper. I didn't even have Edgerrin Cooper on my. They asked me to put together a Packers list, and the Packers list was what we used just to give you a little sausage made tutorial here, I put together the Packers list, and then everyone else got to vote on that one. But we had a limited number of slots. Edgerrin Cooper was not one of the Packers I put on the list. That being said, he will be on this list next year. If he's healthy, if he plays 14 or 15 games in 2025, he will be on this list. I'm telling you, write it down, take it to the bank, put it in a safety deposit box, and set a timer on your phone for a year from now, and we'll talk about it. Because I'm telling you, he is going to be a star. But I do understand the hesitancy here with him because he did, like, how many games did he play more than 50% of snaps? How many games did he start? It was not a big enough sample size for him to make these lists yet, but strictly on his play, he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL last year, just strictly on quality of the play that he did have. I gave you the stat the other day, Pro Football Focus, the highest rate of positively graded plays at linebacker last year, more than Fred Warner, more than Roquan Smith, was Edgerrin Cooper. He is going to be an absolute monster. Now, those are, I think, kind of the obvious ones. I'm thinking about the ascension of someone like Evan Williams. What if, after having a very good rookie season, he comes out and he's the guy that suddenly the ball is bouncing to? They move Xavier McKinney around a little bit more. He's playing the post a little bit more. He's getting those overthrow interceptions instead of Xavier McKinney. Could Evan Williams wind up on this list? I think it would be pretty hard, unless, like, if Matthew Golden comes out and has I'm trying to think of obviously if he has a Justin Jefferson type season, a Jamar Chase rookie season, what if he has a T. Higgins rookie year type rookie year? Would that be good enough to get him on this list? I don't know. What kind of year does Jaden Reed have to get on the list? I think Jaden Reed would have to have probably like 12 or 1,400 yards to get on the list. I really do. I don't think 1,000 yards is going to be enough because it is still going to be too spread out. And the competition at receiver is just too great. Like if Mike Evans is at 69, again, be cool. I don't know how Jaden Reed could get on it. I really don't. Now, I think Elton Jenkins at center could move up the list. I think Xavier McKinney could move up the list. I think Jordan Love will move up the list. I'm trying to think of a deep sleeper here. I just don't know where the opportunity is for any of those guys. Maybe if Nate Hobbs has a bunch of interceptions this year, maybe because he was a free agent acquisition, and if he takes this defense, he's the Jair replacement and makes some big plays in some big games. Like all it takes is, an interception against Jared Goff in a big spot, an interception against JJ McCarthy to steal a game, an interception against, Jalen Hurts or Aaron Rodgers, let's say. Like, that could get you on. Those kinds of moments are often enough. We'll see if the Packers have enough of those moments to get some of these guys on. I hope so. We'll be talking about it, that's for sure. Now, we're not going to wring out 17 days of content off this top 100 list, but we did have to do a full episode on it. There will probably be more to come. There will probably be more references to this list. I will be making fun of my co-hosts and colleagues when I do crossovers for their lack of ball knowledge, because Travis Hunter on this list at all is an abomination, but Ashton Genty almost made it too. I never in a million years, like, we could have had a top 200 and I never would have put a rookie on it. And maybe we should do a top 200. I don't know. All right, back tomorrow. Finish out a week. As we're getting close here to, I saw we're like 2 weeks out from family night already. Think about that. A little bit more, but almost. Crazy. All right, follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski on X, on Instagram. That's enough frankly. But the podcast is everywhere. Everywhere you get podcasts. Also, go subscribe over there. Go subscribe on YouTube so you can stay locked on Packers.